thought would be edifying to all of you guys that were really edifying to me. And so I'll probably start with the very first one, which actually started before I was a missionary. I took a lot of missionary preparation classes. I went to a semester at BYU and took one there. And I also took the missionary preparation class in my branch before I left. And so because of those, I learned how to teach pretty good. At least I thought so. I learned the doctrines that I would be teaching, and I gained a testimony of them. And those were really good. I highly recommend missionary preparation to everybody who intends to serve a mission. But when I got to the field, I noticed something interesting. I noticed that all of that preparation that I had done and all of the knowledge that I had gained was great, but it wasn't necessarily, I guess it didn't necessarily give me the ability to teach, because the ability to teach came from following the Spirit. And so I guess of all experiences, that would be the first one that I learned in my first area. And a good outline of that is when I arrived in my first area, which was in Fishers, Indiana, which is a suburb of Indianapolis on the north side. I was trained by a really great missionary. He taught me how to be diligent, how to work hard. And at the end of my training, the time came for him to leave and for me to get a new companion, which gave me the opportunity to lead out the area for the first time. And at first I was like, hey, I can do this. You know, I've learned everything that I need to, and so I didn't see why not. And so that first day came that I was going to lead out my first area, and I was pretty confident, but I shortly discovered that I did not know everything that I needed to. One particular struggle for me was planning, because I am kind of a perfectionist, and so I like to make sure I'm always using my time as productively as I can, and I didn't want to waste a minute. And so I really, really stressed out my first few weeks leading out that area, because I wanted to spend my time wisely, and I didn't know how to do it. And I couldn't do it on my own, because in Indiana, we do a lot of door knocking, and door knocking is good. It's a good way to show our diligence and our dedication and our faith. But it's not necessarily how you find the most solid and inspiring converts. And so I was really stressed out about that. I wanted to use my time wisely. I didn't want to waste it. And I wanted to be as productive as I could be. Yet I was so torn because I didn't know what else to do with my time. And so one night, as I was writing my journal before bed, I was kind of really stressing out. And so I said a prayer right then. I was like, Heavenly Father, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to spend my time wisely. I don't know what you expect of me. I don't know how to find those people that you have prepared for me to find. And I can't do it. I can't do this on my own. And I got an interesting answer back pretty immediately from that. And the answer was, no, you can't. You can't do that. You can't lead out an area. You can't find those people. You can't make productive plans. But I can. And so I learned a powerful lesson that day, that we can't necessarily do all these things that God expects us to do on our own. But God gives us the power through his Son, Jesus Christ, and through the Holy Ghost for us to accomplish anything that he wants us to do. And so that is a mixture of a bunch of different lessons that I learned then. I learned about faith. I need to actually believe that God will guide me, give me the power, and strengthen me in everything he tells me to do. I needed to trust in the Spirit and listen to the Spirit, I guess, and not rely on what I know and all the preparations that I had done, but I in turn needed to humble myself and listen to the Spirit. And so that was something that I learned from my first area. And it was actually really inspiring to see how the Spirit worked on us, because there was a couple of families that we taught there that, I guess, for example, there was one particular night that we were going to go and visit an investigator named Josh, and we decided to bring the former bishop along, and that was a really good choice. I don't know why, but we felt it prompted to, and so we brought this bishop along, and he invited the Spirit into their home so strongly, and he suggested the idea that we give them a blessing, each one of the members of this family who was kind of struggling with their testimony. It was a part-member family. They were struggling like financially and with relationships. It was all around rough for them. So he had the great idea to give them a blessing, which is probably something I don't think I would have come up with off the top of my head. But it actually ended up being the turning point for Josh, who was the father of that family, who wasn't a member of a church. Because I think that was the first day when he really felt the Spirit strongly testify to him that he needed to get baptized. And so after that night, he started progressing. He started actually keeping his commitments. He started trying his best to come to church, and he eventually did get baptized. And so that was a special experience because it was cool to see how, because we followed a prompting and because we went with God's plan instead of our plan, everything worked out. Whereas then it might not have happened if we wouldn't have done that. And so those are cool stories from my first area. From my second area, which is in Avon, Indiana, which is another suburb west of Indianapolis, there was a cool story. So the missionaries were tracting, the missionaries before me and my companion were tracting one day and attracted into this nice lady who said, "I'm not interested in your message, but I'll give you a bottle of water and a granola bar and send you on your way." And so the missionaries, they were so inspired when they said this. They, after eating this granola bar and this bottle of water, I think it was a hot summer day, and she was talking about how she didn't want to mow her lawn. But she was like, "Hey, we'll mow your lawn for you." And so that's what they did. The missionaries actually came back. She didn't expect them to come back, actually. She said, "Oh, we'll never see those guys again." But the missionaries came back, and it took a couple of months of mowing this random lady's lawn, and then her daughter became interested in the church. She started listening to what the missionaries had to say. And then that was about the time when those missionaries left, and then me and my companion came in. And the daughter really was progressing, but she was attending the other ward, so we didn't teach her. But we continued to mow her mom's lawn, which, I mean, at the time it didn't seem like the most productive thing to do. But the cool part about this story is that because of that, her heart was softened enough that eventually the mom in this family, her name was Dawn, and she was baptized. And the cool part about Dawn's family is that her husband was a military man. He served in the military for a long time. I think he was in the Army. But he struggled a lot mentally, and he actually committed suicide a few years earlier. And so she said something that was really touching. She said, "Before the missionaries came, I never thought I could be happy ever again. But the gospel changed that." She's actually, everybody knows Dawn now in that entire state because she's one of the most inspiring and fun to be around people there are. And I felt really blessed to have the opportunity to work with her and be part of her life. So it's cool to see how, by small and simple things, are some of the greatest things brought to pass. That by a missionary saying, "Hey, I'll mow your lawn," turned this lady and her whole entire family's life around. So that was a really cool experience. So I'll move on to my third area, which is a town called Lafayette, which is about an hour northwest of Indianapolis. It was my third area. And this was an interesting area for me because it was the first time that I had been with a companion who wasn't really driven to work hard. I was really blessed at the beginning of my mission to have companions who wanted to work hard and wanted to do the Lord's work. And so I got to my third area, and I noticed that I really had to push in order for my first two companions there to go out and do work, which was hard for me because I was the junior companion at the time, and I didn't want to be that guy who, comes up from underneath and says, "Get your butt in gear." And so I didn't want to be contentious with my companions, but I noticed a lot of pushback from when I tried to encourage them to work hard. And so we ended up compromising. We're like, I wouldn't necessarily work as hard as obedient as I wanted to be, but in return, they would at least try. And so that was an interesting situation because I noticed for that period of time that I wasn't necessarily as happy, and my mission was not nearly as fruitful as it was before. In my last areas, I was blessed with investigators. They just sort of came out of nowhere, like Josh. He was a referral from the bishop. Dawn, she was found by the missionaries before, who suddenly took interest and lit on fire. But in Lafayette, it wasn't like that. It was really slow. We had pretty much no investigators. And I was kind of bummed. I wasn't necessarily super happy with my mission up to that, at that time, because I wasn't being as obedient or working as hard as I wanted to. And so, once again, it was cool to see the hand of the Lord work in all this, because we were biking one day, and I made a flash decision to make a turn in an intersection we had already passed in order to take a faster route across the city, I guess. And I ended up stopping too quickly, and my companion hit me in the back of my bike and flipped over and hurt his leg. He ended up having to get transferred out of the area, and in came this other guy named Elder Smith. And I had served around Elder Smith before, and I knew he was a young missionary, pretty impressionable, and he liked to work hard. And so right that first night together, we sat down and had a talk, and we had a heart-to-heart. We said, we're going to work as hard as we can. We both had an image in our hearts of who we wanted to be, you know, that missionary that my mom thinks we are, and the missionary that God thinks we are. And so we said, we both have this image. And so we're going to do everything we can over the next however long to make this image a reality. And so we said we're going to be exactly obedient, and we're going to work hard every day, all day. And when we first got together, we set that goal. And like I said, the area was pretty much entirely dead at that point. And I don't know why God saw to do it in the timing that he did, but literally within 12 days, I counted in my journal, 12 days, the area completely flipped around. As had happened before, investigators came out of nowhere. We got 3 different headquarters referrals, all of which progressed fantastically, a few of which got baptized. Literally, there was a really prepared, solid part member family that walked into church. We literally, we're in sacrament meeting, and we're talking to people, and there he is, perfect investigator. He'll be getting baptized soon. And they just came out of nowhere. And it's not anything, it's not that we found them. It's like we knocked on doors or talked to them in the streets. But because we committed ourselves to follow God as best we could, God blessed us. And so Thomas S. Monson always said that obedience brings blessings. And I can definitely echo that testimony, because that's the way it was then in that area, in that instance, but it was also that way my entire mission. And so that was, if I were to identify any major growth point or turning point to my mission, it was probably that day and that few weeks. Because I realized then that when we work hard and when we do our best, then whatever shortcomings that we have or whatever blockages that might be hindering the Lord's work, God takes those out. He progresses his work in his own time. And so I loved that area. That was one of my favorite experiences to share, because it's came out of nowhere. It was definitely the hand of the Lord. Nothing else could have done that. And so my last area, which was a town called Brazil, which is about an hour southwest of Indianapolis. It's a little tiny town about the size of Gunnison, actually. This story is an interesting one, and it really goes to help build my testimony of the inspiration of our church leaders. Because, and I guess it also is a testimony to following the Spirit. Because in Brazil, it's a small town, so we didn't necessarily have a lot of members to work with. We didn't necessarily teach very many people, because there weren't very many people to be taught there. And so in Brazil, we were thinking of creative ways to find people. And in the town of Brazil, football's not the big thing. Like in Indiana, football and basketball are the big things that everybody loves. But in Brazil, it's the marching band, which I thought was cool because I'm kind of a marching band geek. And so we thought, everybody in the town is going to be at this 4th of July marching band concert at the park. And it was like a patriotic thing. And so we thought, well, if we're going to find people anywhere in this town, that's going to be where it is. And so we're at this marching band thing, trying to talk to people about the gospel as they're walking out and stuff. And then we're trying to talk to people, people aren't very interested, kind of avoiding us. Happens all the time. When out of the blue, this lady with her husband and 2 kids walks right up to us and says, "Elders." And whenever someone calls you elders, you know that they know who you are. And so we're whoa, this is weird. And so this lady came up and introduced herself. She said her name was Cindy, and she introduced her husband, Frank, and her 2 kids. She actually has 3 kids, but only 2 of them were there, Ireland and Legend. She said she was a member of the church a long time ago, across the country somewhere, I think it was West Virginia, and that she had just gone through some really rough things in life and had kind of drifted away from the church. But she had seen us around town, riding our bicycles. She saw us at a nursing home, taking the sacrament to a brother there. And from the moment she saw us, she says, "You need to talk to them." The Spirit said, "You need to talk to them." And she said, "I don't want to. That's weird. They're in a nursing home. They're busy. Or they're biking. I don't want to stop them then." But when she saw us, because we just so happened to be going to this random high school marching band concert, she saw us. She said, "Okay, I have to do it." I mean, the Spirit's yelling at me too, so I probably should. And so she came up and she talked to us. And we actually had a really good connection with them. She said on many occasions, and I still don't necessarily completely understand why, but she said on many occasions that I was sent here to teach her. And there were so many times as we taught them, and that whole family, where I would just say something that I thought was probably insignificant that would just really floor her. All the time this happened, almost every time we went over, I would say something that would just so happen to answer the one question she had in her heart. Or it would just so happen to give her the strength that she needed to overcome the trials that she went through that week. And so it's hard to describe in words what that was like. But I know that I was sent there for a reason. I know, first off, that 2 years prior, when an apostle and another apostle were sitting in a room praying about where to send Elder Barrett, they were inspired to pick the right place. I was sent there for a reason. And I know that as my mission president was sitting in his office saying, "Oh, where do we send Elder Barrett now?" he was inspired to send me to the right place. And when the Spirit there told us, "Hey, go to this high school marching band concert thing," which most missionaries probably wouldn't have done, I was sent there for a reason. And so from that experience, it was so cool to see how God put me in the right path to talk to the right person who I was meant to talk to over the course of years and years. This happened. And so the little things that we do in life, I don't think should be underestimated. Because even things that we think are small can affect the course of our life and the destinations and the people we meet super significantly. I can also think of other instances on my mission where experiences that I had before led me to say the perfect things then, and if that makes sense. So the experiences that I had before in my mission about following the Spirit and making the little things count and obeying the gospel, all those things prepared me to teach this one lady and her family at the end of my mission. And I still don't know to this day the extent of what that will bring, but I know that I was sent there for a reason. And it was just cool to see that no matter how small the experience before, I was always prepared and put in the right place in God's plan to do His work. So now I'm here, and I'm anxious to see what else the Lord has in store for me.
Anyone have any questions for Brother Barrett?
Well, thank you for being here. I love your countenance. The Spirit's obviously with you, so you're lifting the roof here this evening. But I'm curious, 2 things. The Book of Mormon, before your mission, where were you, your testimony, what did you pull from the Book of Mormon? And now, after having served, what do you think of the Book of Mormon, and how did you use it in your mission?
Yeah.
And then the importance of member missionary work. Members of a branch and a ward
Yeah.
together with the missionaries, the importance of that.
All right. So I'll start with the Book of Mormon. And this is something that I actually think is also cool, that I noticed throughout my mission, and especially at the end, is like my whole life I had a testimony of the Book of Mormon. You know, my mom and dad did a really good job helping us read the Book of Mormon, and on many occasions I would testify to the fact that reading the Book of Mormon invites the Spirit. Whenever a family was going through a hard time, or their kids were misbehaving, or they're having troubles in their relationship, almost always I would say read the Book of Mormon together, because it'll invite the Spirit. And so my whole life I've always had this testimony that I know the Book of Mormon invites the Spirit. But I never really saw what that meant or saw the extent of that until I was a missionary. And so I tell people I had a testimony of the Book of Mormon the whole time, but it was never as strong as I thought it could be. I guess that's not quite how to say that. I never knew how strong it could be until I was a missionary. And I saw that, and I was put to the test, both in aspects of spiritual confirmation of the Book of Mormon and aspects of my faithfulness towards it and real intent in following the things that it says to do. And so in all aspects, I've seen my testimony of the Book of Mormon grow. And I love, in the introduction page of the Book of Mormon, I share this with everyone, Joseph Smith told the brethren that the Book of Mormon was the most correct book of any on earth, and that a man would draw nearer to God by abiding by its precepts than by any other book. I know that to be true, because that's the way it was for me. The Book of Mormon has answered so many prayers, and it has changed my life for the better. I know its fruit to be good, because on countless occasions in my life, it has led me closer to God, and has made me happier. It's made me feel the Holy Ghost significantly more in my life, and it's guided me to be the person that I am today, which I'm happy with. Does that answer your question with that?
Very much so, thank you.
Awesome. All right, now with members. So in Indiana, there is different areas for different things. So like in my first area, which was Fishers, the ward was huge and really strong. Everyone in that ward loved each other. It was one big family.